you go from up here with Judah and Simeon, where they're basically successful, and then, like, you read further down, Manasseh failed to drive out, like, 5 different towns, but they forced the Canaanites to work as slaves, seemingly right then and there. Well, no, maybe a little bit later. Then you get to Dan, and it's like their initial attempts just completely failed, it seemed. What's up, cool people? My name is Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay. So, today we are looking at Judges. Finished up Joshua last time, and this is the next book of the Bible, so, do I dare to give a summary of the entirety of the Bible up to this point? Probably not. So, basically, what happened throughout Joshua, at least, was, the Israelites, God's kind of, like, chosen people, made their way to the Promised Land, conquered it, or at least most of it, split up the land amongst the different tribes, and established all the other stuff that needed to go along with that, for them to essentially all have their, like, homeland territory. And then Joshua and Eleazar and, like, some of the leaders that, helped get them through all that, wound up dying. And so it kind of implied that maybe the Israelites aren't going to follow God so well after that. But we'll see what happens in more detail here. So, yeah. They've settled in, basically. And this is after all the settling in and dividing the land has happened. So anyway, yeah. Here we go. Judges chapter 1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, which tribe should go first to attack the Canaanites? The Lord answered, Judah, for I have given them victory over the land. The men of Judah said to their relatives from the tribe of Simeon, join with us to fight against the Canaanites living in the territory allotted to us. Then we will help you conquer your territory. So the men of Simeon went with Judah. Okay, so it's not really stated how much of the tribal allotments here was yet to be conquered. But it seems like it's at least a noticeable amount. Also finding it interesting that, when the tribal allotments were, divvied out, whatever you want to call that, the allotment for the tribe of Simeon was within that of Judah. So like, of course, by helping Judah conquer their territory, Simeon was essentially helping themselves, because their land was going to be within Judah's. Anyway, not really obvious for sure. Yeah, the Lord says he's given Judah victory over the land, but, like, wasn't that supposed to be the case for all of them? Or maybe that was just at the particular moment. I don't know. And why wouldn't they just all attack the Canaanites? Why would it be tribe by tribe? I don't know. There's a bunch of this that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I guess because they had already divided the land amongst the different tribes, it was, I don't know. Anywho, okay, on to verse 4. When the men of Judah attacked, the Lord gave them victory over the Canaanites and Perizzites, and they killed 10,000 enemy warriors at the town of Bezek. While at Bezek, they encountered King Adoni-Bezek and fought against him, and the Canaanites and Perizzites were defeated. Adoni-Bezek escaped, but the Israelites soon captured him and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Adoni-Bezek said, I once had 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off, eating scraps from under my table. Now God has paid me back for what I did to them. They took him to Jerusalem, and he died there. Huh. Interesting. So, I was thinking for a sec, why cut off his thumbs and big toes? But it was literally just God doing a whole poetic justice sort of moment. Because he had apparently done that to 70 other kings. But otherwise, unsurprising that the men of Judah and I guess Simeon attacked and were successful. Okay, verse 8. The men of Judah attacked Jerusalem and captured it, killing all its people and setting the city on fire. Then they went down to fight the Canaanites living in the hill country, the Negev, and the western foothills. Judah marched against the Canaanites in Hebron, formerly called Kiriath Arba, defeating the forces of Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. Okay, sorry, real quick. Noting Jerusalem, like any other city in the unconquered Promised Land, Jerusalem was not initially in the possession of the Israelites. So, believe it or not, despite that being like the main city in Israel today, in really Israel back then even, for the most part, yeah, they still had to go conquer it. Makes me wonder a little bit why they made that basically the capital, for lack of a better way to put it. But maybe we'll get to that later. I'm sure if we need to know why, it'll mention it later. Also, footnote there at the western foothills. Hebrews says the Shephelah instead of western foothills. That seems to be what it was likely called. Alright, verse 11. From there, which I assume is Hebron or somewhere thereabouts, from there, they went to fight against the people living in the town of Debir, formerly called Kiriath Sefer. Caleb said, I will give my daughter Aksa in marriage to the one who attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer. Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother Kenaz, was the one who conquered it, so Aksa became Othniel's wife. We read about this a little bit back in Joshua when it was talking about the land that became Caleb's possession. So I don't know if we need to go into too much detail about what all is going on there. If you want more detail, just go back to that chapter. I forget exactly which one it was, but it was somewhere in the later portion of Joshua. Verse 14. When Aksa married Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And she got down off her donkey, as she got down off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What's the matter?" She said, "Let me have another gift. You have already given me land in the Negev. Now please give me springs of water too." So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. Again, this was mentioned back in Joshua as well. The footnote there probably even says the same thing. Greek version and Latin Vulgate read, he urged her. Considering she ends up being the one asking, that to me, makes more sense. Or maybe she had urged Othniel, and after waiting for him to do it for a while and him not doing it, she just took it upon herself. I don't know. So we're at verse 16 in here at the moment. When the tribe of Judah left Jericho, the city of palms, the Kenites, who were descendants of Moses' father-in-law, traveled with them into the wilderness of Judah. They settled among the people there, near the town of Arad in the Negev. Then Judah joined with Simeon to fight against the Canaanites living in Zephath, and they completely destroyed the town. So the town was named Hormah. In addition, Judah captured the towns of Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, along with their surrounding territories. So the Kenites were the descendants of... I was just like, wait, why are we bringing up Moses' father-in-law in this? Because there was, like, sort of a further back ancestral connection between them, I guess. Which, okay, Moses' father-in-law was Jethro, right? So, I feel like it would be a little more obvious if they just said his name in the midst of that. But as the Bible, especially the Old Testament, tends to do, it is very, very much focused on, you know, the Israelites, God's chosen people through Abraham and that lineage. Anyway, so I'm assuming it says the people of Judah settled near the town of Arad. Not that the Kenites did. Or maybe it is the Kenites, because the Kenites traveled with them. Anyway, not an important detail. So then Judah helped Simeon capture their territory afterwards. Let me check the footnotes here. At destroyed, it says the Hebrew term used here refers to the complete consecration of things or people to the Lord, either by destroying them or by giving them as an offering. Basically, anything that was in the town was not meant to be kept by the people. It was meant to either be destroyed so they wouldn't have the things and be tempted by them, or it was given to God, still leaving it out of anyone's personal possession. And the town was named Hormah, means destruction. Makes sense. Very literal names. I've noticed that's a theme with, you know, the Israelites in the Old Testament. Okay. Moving on to verse 19. The Lord was with the people of Judah, and they took possession of the hill country. But they failed to drive out the people living in the plains, who had iron chariots. The town of Hebron was given to Caleb as Moses had promised, and Caleb drove out the people living there, who were descendants of the 3 sons of Anak. The tribe of Benjamin, however, failed to drive out the Jebusites, who were living in Jerusalem. So to this day, the Jebusites live in Jerusalem among the people of Benjamin. This day being whenever this would have been written and or read and or spoken to the people, because it's a lot more of an oral tradition of passing things along back in these times. So Hebron being given to Caleb was basically, that whole thing was, as they initially scouted out the promised land, that was the part that Caleb and Joshua scouted, and they were the only ones who gave a good report and weren't too scared of the people living there. So I guess in part because of that, Caleb at least was promised that land that he had scouted out. And I've said this in previous chapters, but for those who haven't seen those or read those, this whole thing about descendants of Anak, I'm fairly certain the Anakites were believed to be some sort of either like giant of a sort, or some people would claim / argue that this was evidence of what would be called the Nephilim. But like the thought on that kind of isn't totally settled. Like, there doesn't seem to be a definitive answer as to what that meant, but just if it mentions sons of Anak, just know that these weren't exactly thought of as, normal, certainly not like normal sized people of normal strength. They were supposed to be rather large and strong at the very least. So driving out the people living there would have been all the more difficult to task because of that. And yeah, it's, Caleb being the just go-getter that he is, was apparently up to the challenge. And I will move on to verse 22. The descendants of Joseph attacked the town of Bethel, and the Lord was with them. They sent men to scout out Bethel, formerly known as Luz, or Luz, I don't know. They confronted a man coming out of the town and said to him, "Show us a way into the town, and we will have mercy on you." So he showed them a way in, and they killed everyone in the town except that man and his family. Later the man moved to the land of the Hittites, where he built a town. He named it Luz, which is its name to this day. So the previous town where this guy lived in, which I guess was then at this point called Bethel, that town was known as Luz, but this dude was kept alive, moved somewhere else, and named his new town by that same name. I guess he wanted to be reminded of home or something, I don't know, but so now we're getting into different tribes conquering different towns and or pieces of land. I would assume this is happening in relatively quick succession, but just on various fronts, because given the tribal allotments, they're not all just going to be dealing with stuff that's like right there next to each other. Anyway, so Joseph's descendants were given a little bit of help in conquering the town, but it worked. So, and it's not like they did anything terribly deceptive or anything. It's just they asked somebody from there to help them out, and they would show him mercy, and dude decided to help them. Anywho, verse 27. The tribe of Manasseh failed to drive out the people living in Beth-shan, Tanakh, Dor, Ibleam, Megiddo, and all their surrounding settlements, because the Canaanites were determined to stay in that region. When the Israelites grew stronger, they forced the Canaanites to work as slaves, but they never did drive them completely out of the land. Footnote of Beth-shan. Hebrew just gives a different spelling of the same place. Also, so that's like 5 different towns that Manasseh failed to really drive the people out of, which might not have been a ton of, like, the, area, but still enough that could have come back around and been a little bit of an issue, especially with, more people being there, living in that area to come and interact with them, maybe talk about their gods or whatever they worship, and then tempt the people of Manasseh into turning away from the Lord. And even later on, it's like, yeah, okay, they took control of those towns, but they still didn't, like, drive the people out completely. They just had them as slaves instead. Anyway. Verse 29. The tribe of Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, so the Canaanites continued to live there among them. The tribe of Zebulun failed to drive out the residents of Kitron and Nahalol, so the Canaanites continued to live among them. But the Canaanites were forced to work as slaves for the people of Zebulun. Noticing just a bunch of failures here to drive out people from these various towns within their territories, which is going to maybe be important later for the reasons I kind of mentioned with the whole bit about Manasseh, because those people would have still been there and interacting with the Israelites, therefore, more possibilities to get drawn away from worshiping the Lord and doing what they were supposed to do. Verse 31. The tribe of Asher failed to drive out the residents of Akko, Sidon, Alab, Akzib, Helba, Aphik, and Rehob. Instead, the people of Asher moved in among the Canaanites who controlled the land, for they failed to drive them out. Likewise, the tribe of Naphtali failed to drive out the residents of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath. Instead, they moved in among the Canaanites who controlled the land. Nevertheless, the people of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath were forced to work as slaves for the people of Naphtali. Weird, considering the people of Naphtali were the ones moving into there, but oh well. Let me wrap up reading the verses before I give too many other thoughts. As for the tribe of Dan, the Amorites forced them back into the hill country and would not let them come down into the plains. The Amorites were determined to stay in Mount Heres. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but whatever. Mount Heres, Aijalon, and Shalbim. But when the descendants of Joseph became stronger, they forced the Amorites to work as slaves. The boundary of the Amorites ran from Scorpion Pass to Selah and continued upward from there. Footnote at Scorpion Pass, Hebrews says Akrabim, which it's another one of those same place, different name for it kind of things, to the best of my knowledge. So it also seems like, as I've been reading through these, that, like, the ability of God's people to drive out the Canaanites or whoever else was living in the territory, like, that seemed to get less and less effective as I read further down. Like, you go from up here with Judah and Simeon, where they're basically successful, other than, like, they might have had just a few people that they didn't drive out. Like, didn't drive out the people living in the plains who had iron chariots, okay. And then, like, you read further down, Manasseh failed to drive out, like, 5 different towns, but they forced the Canaanites to work as slaves, seemingly right then and there. Well, no, maybe a little bit later. I mean, still in all these cases, eventually it was like, okay, the other people of the land typically wound up at least becoming slaves eventually, but then you get to Dan, and it's like their initial attempts just completely failed, it seemed. And then maybe eventually later on, they forced the Amorites to work as slaves, but still, it's like the rate of success just continues going down as you read further along in the chapter, which again could be a significant problem in regards to like them being tempted to stop worshiping the Lord later on. But anyway, not really too many other thoughts on the chapter there. So I guess that'll do it for Judges chapter 1. Alright, so that's the start of the book of Judges, and not exactly the best looking start to things. I mean, it's good that they, conquered some more land, towns, however you want to refer to that, but the trend throughout that chapter is not exactly a positive one. We'll see whether or not that keeps up and what all else happens as we continue. But anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. If you're seeing this over on Rumble, give me a follow over there. Either way, look down in the description for info on other social media pages and all that good stuff. And leave comments down below there with any thoughts you have. So that'll do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.